Welcome to Sitecore Spark. I am Brandon Bruno. With this video, we're going to be going through a Sitecore 9 installation on a local developer environment. Of course, this is my little tongue-in-cheek introductory slide before the presentation, so take note. Let's review our goals for this video. Our primary goal is a minimum fuss local Sitecore setup intended for a development environment. We are assuming that there are no Sitecore 9 prereqs installed, so we will be going through those. We are going to be using the XP0 topology. This is new with Sitecore 9. There are several topologies available. We are using Solr for search. This is a big change from previous versions of Sitecore, as Sitecore typically comes with Lucene out of the box. Lucene is still an option in Sitecore 9. However, given that XConnect requires Solr, I think we are moving to a development environment where Solr is now standard. One wrinkle that we'll see in this video is that Solr by default needs to be set up in a secure way. So we'll be going through those steps using a very handy shortcut. Finally, we are going to be using the Sitecore Installation Framework. This is the new standard recommended path to install Sitecore. Lots of PowerShell ahead. Let's take a look at the platform prereqs for Sitecore 9. Sitecore 9 requires Windows 8.1, Windows 10, or Windows Server 2012 R2. The .NET Framework 4.6.2 is required, SQL Server 2016 or greater, IIS 8.5 or 10, and the Java runtime environment is required for running Solr. Now let's take a look at some of the application prereqs for Sitecore 9. Microsoft PowerShell 5.1, the Web Platform Installer 5.0, Web Administration Module with IIS. This should be installed by default with IIS 8.5 or 10. Web Deploy 3.6 comes in via the Web Platform Installer. You may have to do this. The URL Rewrite 2 module, again, via the Web Platform Installer. You'll have to do this probably. Microsoft SQL Server Data Tier Application Framework 17.1. Again, the WPI will take care of this. And finally, the Microsoft SQL Server Transact SQL Script DOM library. That comes in via the WPI as well. So let's get started with the Sitecore 9 installation. The first step is to gather some files. I highly recommend you download and keep a copy of the Sitecore installation guide handy. This has lots of useful reference information. It's great for Sitecore developers to at least have at the ready. Of course, you'll need your Sitecore license file. And for Sitecore 9, for a local instance, we need the on-prem XP0 packages. You can download this from dev.sitecore.net. Let's go grab that XP0 on-premises deployment package for Sitecore 9. The Sitecore developer site should look familiar to those who've been using Sitecore 8. Underneath our download options here, we do have a on-premises deployment section, and we are looking for this XP0 package right here. For step 2, we're going to set up an installation folder that will contain configuration files, zip files, and other media that we need to get Sitecore 9 working with the Sitecore Install Framework. An example directory that we want to create is C Sitecore/install. We want to extract the package files from the XP0 zip file. This contains 2 other zip files that we're interested in, as well as several JSON configuration files. So as you'll see, I have a Sitecore folder off of my C root. I have an install folder, and this is where I'm going to keep all my files. So I already have my license.xml file set up in here. I have the Sitecore XP0 package downloaded from dev.sitecore.net. So I want to extract these first 2 files. And I want to extract these JSON configuration files into that same directory. Step 3 is to get the Solr prerequisites installed. For this, we're going to be using Solr 6.6.2. And we're going to unzip this into any directory. I prefer a common location, so we're going to be putting this next to the Sitecore installation media off the C root. Okay, I'm going to get Solr installed. The latest version of Solr is 7.1. We actually need an archive version. So I'm going to go back to 6.6.2 and download the zip file. And I'm going to extract that zip file to my Sitecore directory off of the C root. So I have my installation folder here. I'm going to unzip this right next to it. Okay, I have my Solr folder unzipped. I'm going to go in here, open the bin folder, and I'm going to start up an instance of Solr just to prove that everything is working. And to test it out, I'm going to go to my localhost, to my Solr admin page. Okay, it looks like it's working. So before we continue, I'm going to go ahead and stop Solr. For step 4, we are going to be setting up Solr as a Windows service. To do this, we're going to be using the non-sucking service manager tool. You can download this from nssm.cc. And we're going to copy this zip file to the C Sitecore directory that we created earlier. Okay, I'm going to get the non-sucking service manager tool installed here. This is a quick download. I'm using the pre-release version, which offers better compatibility with Windows 10. I'm going to drop this folder next to the Sitecore installation folder that we created earlier. And for the sake of scripting later on, I'm going to simplify this folder name. So let's get Solr set up as a Windows service using the non-sucking service manager. To do this, I'm going to open up a command prompt as an administrator. I'm going to navigate to the non-sucking service manager's executable directory. Here, I'm going to run the install command. All of these properties relate to Solr. So I'm going to navigate back to the Solr directory. I'm going to go to the bin folder, and we need to execute this command right here. So I'm going to grab this directory path and get these parameters all filled out. And for convenience, I'm going to fill out some information about the service we're setting up. And click Install. At this point, we want to take a look and confirm that the service was installed. So I'm going to open up the Services Manager. And verify that the installation was a success. Now let's go ahead and start this and see what happens. There we go. To confirm this, I'm going to navigate to my localhost Solr admin panel. There we go. Now that we have Solr installed as a Windows service, it's time to secure it. So Sitecore 9 is going all in on security and requires secure connections between many pieces of the new platform. So from the get-go, we need to create a self-signed certificate for local development when we're talking to Solr. Luckily, the Sitecore community has already stepped up and provided some tools and shortcuts that make this quite a bit easier. The first example we're going to use is a PowerShell script that generates the self-signed certificate and installs it for us. So the first step to this process is to go to Cam's website and grab his script that he provides. I've already done this, and like all the other files I have, I'm going to drop this into the installation folder. So before we get started with the script, I want to go ahead and make a quick change to it. The script makes use of the Java key tool, which is a certificate manager. This path is not in my environment, so I want to go ahead and point that directly to the key tool. So I'm going to open up and find that. Just to confirm, there it is. So here's the path I need. I'm just going to drop this in the script like that. And we are all good to go. Okay, so let's get the certificate installed. I'm going to need a PowerShell window run as an administrator. And I need to start in the installation directory. I need to pass in the location of the key store, which in my case will be the Solr directory, server, etc. And there we go. So far everything looks good. So let's go ahead and confirm that our key store files were created. Looks like they're there. Following directions, there's a couple more things we need to do. We need to go ahead and uncomment some lines in the Solr configuration files. We're going to go up to our bin folder, open up the solr.in command file, and scroll down to our section about SSL. And these first 4 lines are going to be enabled. Okay, save that file. And now we need to restart the Solr service. I can go back to my services here and restart. So far, so good. So let's go ahead and confirm that Solr is up and working. Once again, localhost Solr. You'll notice that we get an error page, invalid HTTP response. But guess what? Navigate to the secure version, and we're up and running. Step 6 is probably the most optional step for most developers. If you've been developing with Sitecore in the past, you probably already have SQL Server set up locally and have proper users set up. So if you want to glance over this step, feel free. For those who are in need of a SQL Server user, we're going to set up kind of a standard Sitecore install user. This is just going to be a separate user with the system admin role assigned to them. Okay, so to create a SQL Server user for the Sitecore 9 installation, we're going to open up SQL Server Management Studio, connect to our local host. Under the security section, under logins, I'm going to create a new user. I like to keep this simple, so I'm going to go ahead and create a nice, easy, memorable user. I'm going to use SQL Server authentication. Uncheck enforce password policy and give it the sysadmin server role. Now just to verify that that user is working, I'm going to go ahead and reconnect to my local host using SQL Server authentication. And this should be pretty straightforward. All right, I'm connected. Looks like the user's good. So step 7 comes directly from the Sitecore installation guide. We need to reconfigure SQL Server for contained database authentication. This is a very simple process because, quite frankly, Sitecore gives you all the code you need. To demo this very quickly, I'm going to open up SQL Server Management Studio, connect to my local host, open a new query window, and I already have copied the code from the Sitecore installation guide. I'm going to drop it in here and execute. All right, all done. So with step 8, we finally get to the actual Sitecore Install Framework. This is where we jump into PowerShell and do a lot of setup and configuration of the Sitecore SIF repositories and the Sitecore fundamentals modules. So let's dive back into PowerShell. I have a PowerShell prompt open as an administrator. First step, we're going to register the Sitecore repositories. Okay, so our next step is to install the SIF module. Okay, next step, let's go ahead and install the Sitecore Fundamentals module. Now we're going to import both of these modules into our current session. Step 9, we are finally ready to run the Sitecore Install Framework script. Before we do that though, we do need to just configure a couple more variables at the top of the script. Then we're going to run it. And as you'll see, we're probably going to go grab some lunch while we wait for it to run. The Sitecore installation guide provides the code you need to kick off the SIF installation process. So when you grab this code, the first thing you want to do is go ahead and make sure that these parameters at the top are all correct. Definitely pay attention to the PowerShell script root, the Solr URL, the Solr root, the Solr service name, and the SQL Server admin and admin password. If everything looks good in this file, go ahead and grab the code, open up a PowerShell as an administrator, and let it rip. Okay, the Sitecore installation has finished, so let's go ahead and open up Sitecore in the browser and make sure everything is working properly. And there you have it, Sitecore's up and running. So your final step is going to involve a couple of post-installation steps. These are right from the guide. I'm not going to go over these in detail. I will say that there's a SQL Server script that needs run and a couple of housekeeping tasks such as index rebuilding. So I will refer you to the Sitecore installation guide for those final steps. Thanks for following along. If you have any questions, please reach out to me on my website, sitecorespark.com, or you can find me on Twitter as SitecoreSpark. Thank you.